this two-day show for Indy Lights. 2 practice sessions today. Well, IndyCar has already qualified. Indy Lights not set to qualify until noon tomorrow.
Yeah, that's interesting. It seems like most of the time on these 2-day weekends, Saturday is a practice qualified day for the Indy Lights series, and then maybe a warm-up session in the morning on race day. But no, for Indy Lights, today it's 2 practice sessions as we've got one car sideways out of turn number 4. That is Felix Cales. It looked like he was trying to get down onto pit lane and simply he missed the pit wall, but nearly spun that car sideways. He jumped on the brakes, and now he will drive right through the access road just to the right of the pit wall, and that is going to bring out a yellow flag as he will make his way back out on the racetrack. So almost a big moment there for second-year driver Felix Cales. As we mentioned, though, 2 practice sessions for the Indy Lights series today. Dean Stoneman was the quickest of the morning practice session. He turned that quick lap at over 163 miles per hour late in the session, and it knocked Juan Pedrohita from the top of the charts, who was also very fast. So those 13 drivers will make their way back to pit lane. We should be going back to green very soon as Felix Cales, the driver from Puerto Rico, had a big moment there out of turn number 4. As I mentioned, we got a couple pit reporters down on pit lane. Let's start with Jake Query.
Nick, I'll tell you what, right now it is a spectacular late afternoon here in Iowa, early evening if you will. Sun splashed in this racetrack, watching everybody come in off of this course after the situation with Cales. But any extra time that was added to this session might be burnt away right now. You wonder why it is, folks, that we had extra time, an additional 5 minutes in this session. That's because in the first practice session today, just before the Indy Lights went out onto this track, the Arca cars were out. One of them laid some oil down onto the surface and predominantly along pit road. So they had to go ahead and get the oil dry, make sure, of course, that all of that moisture was up off the track before they sent out the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires. That bled over into a little bit of the allotted practice time, and therefore the extended time in this particular session just to make up for it. One of the things that seemed to be the big storyline in the practice session earlier today was the balance of the race cars. In the past here at Iowa, we've talked about the fact that there is that turn 2 underneath tunnel that goes underneath the track here. It had originally created a bump situation in turn number 2. That seems to have been smoothened out, but there is an imbalance between 3 and 4. Earlier today in the Verizon IndyCar Series, we saw Ryan Hunter-Reay have an incident in turn number 4. His teammate Marco Andretti also had a situation, much like we just saw with Felix Cales, where it irritated the balance of the race car. Andretti lost control momentarily, was able to save it. But what we saw earlier today was a lot of the teams going out, then coming in after a few circuits on the track and adjusting the balance to the front of the race car because, as our Davey Hamilton explained to us earlier during IndyCar qualifying, that's the first part of the car that feels that irritation. You need to make sure that that balance is good in order to get the rest of the car to facilitate itself through the turns. Obviously, everybody wants to get a final adjustment here, Nick, before, in an unusual situation, as you mentioned. Then tomorrow we come back, should be about the same conditions. 85 degrees right now. The track temperature very warm, 125 degrees. These rubber tires, they don't have an issue with that, though. The rubber starts to really get a grip, although it does get a little bit slick the hotter the track gets. Hard to think that at any point tomorrow it will be any hotter than the track is right now.
Track is green once again here at Iowa Speedway. Kyle Kaiser for Juncos Racing, the first driver to go out on the racetrack. He'll streak across the start-finish line as he gets some heat in those Cooper tires, as well as some heat in that Mazda engine. Kaiser currently the second fastest. Well, the only yellow flag that we've had so far in this session, again, was for a big moment for Felix Cales, who got sideways coming off of turn number 4, and Rob Howden down on pit lane has more.
Yeah, we're right here with the car right now, Nick, and a very scary moment actually for Felix Cales. Was not just a basic spin coming through turns 3 and 4. Looks like the left rear wheel bearing actually let loose. It broke the disc brake as well. The brake disc snapped right in half, sheared off the inside of it. So actually a pretty solid effort there by Cales to keep the car out of the wall, both on the outside and the inside of the racetrack. But that's it, Nick, for Cales. He's already climbed out of the car. His session done here already with the problem with that left rear.
Boy, Mark Janes with a 50-minute practice session for these drivers. That is a tough break for Felix Cales to be done just a handful of minutes, handful of laps into the session. He was only able to turn 6 laps.
Yeah, I guess, though, better now than tomorrow. I mean, you've got plenty of time. Of course, it's going to cost some extra work for the team this year. But, they should have an opportunity to get that thing buttoned up before they go qualifying tomorrow. I think Felix has a lot of confidence in that team, and he should be ready and put together a solid qualifying effort tomorrow.
So, again, as Rob Howden reported, Felix Cales, driver of that number 4, that dark navy blue for Carlin Racing, appears to be done for the session. Cales came into this weekend 5th in points, just 44 markers behind. So going to lose some valuable track time, but certainly will have an opportunity tomorrow morning with a fresh buttoned-up race car to go qualifying with the rest of these drivers. The Indy Lights practice session, again, scheduled for about 50 minutes. The Verizon IndyCar Series drivers, they're not done for the day. They'll get back on the racetrack at 6:15 Eastern. They'll get a chance to go back out for a qualifying session for a half hour. So going to be awful interesting to see those drivers that were very fast. The spirited qualifying session that saw the Chevrolet bow ties put those cars towards the top of the charts with Simon Pagenaud grabbing the pole. But again, that is 6:15 local, 7:15 Eastern later this afternoon. Back to pit lane and Jake Query.
Felix Cales out of the car and looking over some of the data. Man, I know this for this session, this is not obviously how you wanted it to start or end, but take me through first off the incident. What happened?
I don't really know what happened. I mean, from the start of the practice, the car felt a bit funny, and then it just started feeling wobbly from the rear, and then suddenly something broke coming out of 4. It's unfortunate, but qualifying's tomorrow, which is the good thing, and I'm really, really confident that, we have a good car. I was really confident in free practice 1, so it's a shame that I'm not out there, but I'm happy that I didn't crash.
In terms of the track itself, what challenges did you notice in the earlier session, and is there indeed something maybe that you did want to work on in this session that was still a trick to the car? You said you thought it felt pretty good.
And not a lot. I mean, driving-wise, it's up to the driver, to put everything together, to have, the big balls to, go flat out every corner. But setup-wise, I was really confident. Me and the engineer and the team, I'm really confident with what they can do. They won here last year, and the test last week was really good. So it's a shame, but I think it's going to make it more exciting for tomorrow.
And lastly, let me ask you this. When you get on these little bull ring tracks, patience becomes important because virtually all the time there's going to be somebody on either side of you. Is that a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, last year my tire blew out in the race, so it's a gamble, but it makes it more fun, and sometimes it's even better, and sometimes you end up getting the wrong end of the stick. So hopefully tomorrow, all the bad luck's out of the way today, and then tomorrow, we can qualify well and race well.
Best of luck tomorrow. We'll talk to you then.
Thank you.
That's Felix Cales, guys.
A little bit further down to pit lane to Rob Howden.
Yeah, Nick, just to talk a little bit about what we expect to see out of this session. We know it's going to be a 15-minute run, as you said before, extended by 5 minutes after losing a little bit of time in the morning session. You were going to see some changes here on the race cars, I have no doubt about it. But in these initial runs to start things off, drivers all kind of just settling in and getting the baseline and getting the feel of any changes they may have made. As I came out into pit lane, one of the things that did pop out to me is a number of drivers have pulled the rear gurney flap off that top rear wing. And again, they have that flap. It gets the car settled a little more downforce. A number of these younger drivers, guys that haven't been here before, like Anil Alberico, the first time he's ever been here in Indy Lights, wants to make sure that car is planted, wants to make sure he is very comfortable. They've pulled that gurney flap off of his car. Alberico now with the just plain rear wing. So again, we're seeing some adjustments on aero, and I have no doubt that we're going to see some adjustments to the mechanical grip as well as this longer session plays out.
And with that, Rob Howden, we will certainly anticipate seeing some speeds pick up here towards the later portions of this practice session for the Indy Lights Series, presented by Cooper Tires. It is Ed Jones at the top of the charts at 162.517 miles per hour. Zach Veach, our most recent winner, most recent first-time winner for 2016. He's taken that Bilardi racing machine to second quick at 161.287 miles per hour. Kyle Kaiser, the driver for Juncos Racing, and that navy and white number 18 is third quick at 161.058. Then quite a bit of a drop-off, nearly a mile and a half difference from the front three to the remaining 10 drivers. Juan Pedrojita is currently fourth quick at 159.7 miles per hour. Dean Stoneman is fifth. Neil Alberico getting up to speed for Carlin Racing. He's sixth quick. Zachary Clayman DeMello is seventh. Felix Cales, 8th quick. Santi Urrutia, 9th. Dalton Kellett is 10th. Shelby Blackstock, 11th quick. Heeman Choi is 12th. And Andre Negrau for Schmidt-Peterson still trying to find some speed as he is 13th quick. He's making his way down the back straightaway right now, and it's a pair of Schmidt-Peterson cars setting up for turn number 3. That is the 17 of Andre Negrau, the 77 of Heeman Choi. And Mark, those two drivers, 12th and 13th on the speed charts, I would assume they both know they're in the same boat with a lot of inexperience on the oval, maybe following each other and working with each other. They can find some speed that they are certainly lacking here in this practice session.
It's about seat time and getting comfortable in the race car, certainly here at Iowa Speedway. Again, during our IndyCar qualifying show, we had our driver analyst Davey Hamilton on, and we talked about that. Road and street courses can sometimes be a little more forgiving with an ill-handling race car, especially some of the tighter street courses where speed is not as much at a premium. But boy, an ill-handling race car with all the nuances around here. The biggest issue you're going to face, I think, early on in the race with 10 or 15 laps or so, you're going to find yourself in traffic and have to wrestle with that throughout the course of the day. So, Jake Query, you have an update on the 17 of Andre Negrau.
Well, I just wanted to add, Mark, to what you're saying in terms of road and streets versus ovals in the course of Andre Negrau. We've mentioned this before, but keep in mind, the first oval in which we ran this year, when I say we, of course, I mean by the series, we weren't physically in the car, but that these drivers ran, was that of Phoenix. And I remember talking to Negrau in Phoenix. He was very optimistic about that weekend, and he was also very curious because that was the only track in which he had tested, and as a result of that, the only oval in which he had been in an Indy Lights car. Now, if you recall back to Phoenix, the practice session there, he had gremlins in his car, and as a result, didn't get a lot of practice time. Had to go strictly off of qualifying and the race itself to get experience and that feel for that oval. Then, of course, you factor in the fact the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Texas, and then here at Iowa. And so as a result of that, and for that matter, at Texas, we all know what happened. Lights wasn't even there, and then you had the rain conditions. So if he's watching that, he didn't even get to see cars out there. So very, very limited oval experience, guys. And as a result of that, Nick, you had touched on the fact that strictly looking for that speed, that's not unusual, I don't think, or unexpected for Negrau in this situation, because this is indeed a ladder feeder series where guys are trying to learn their craft and find different areas. And for a lot of them, I think Negrau represents, he's a good representative of this. This is strictly a new concept, running on these ovals. That's why right now at a 155.376, Negrau finds himself 13th on the speed chart.
It is certainly all about learning. Of course, the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires is a part of the Mazda Road to Indy. Mazda Road to Indy is the only driver development program of its type in the world, providing a scholarship-funded path from USF 2000, Pro Mazda, and Indy Lights to the Verizon IndyCar Series and the Indianapolis 500. In 2016, over $3.6 million in prizes and awards are on offer. The Mazda Road to Indy is where tomorrow's stars race today. Reigning Indy Lights champion Spencer Pigot, of course, is the most successful driver in Mazda Road to Indy history with 24 victories. He's also the only driver to earn 4 Mazda scholarships to graduate to IndyCar. And wouldn't you know it, Rob Howden, you've caught up with him down there on pit lane.
Yeah, you know what? You always find Spencer Pigot working his way back down here to the Lights grid. He always wants to come and see what the guys are doing here with his old team, Juncos Racing. You're not running here on the oval, Spencer. You'll be back with Ed Carpenter Racing in Toronto. Talk a little bit first about how things have gone for you. You need a little bit of time to come up to speed, and you've done a great job, a couple of good finishes, and of course a huge top 10 at Road America.
Yeah, it's been great, so far after joining ECR. I mean, they've been a lot of help. It's great being teammates with Joseph and, Ed obviously as well. They've got a great group of guys, so I think we're finally starting to, really get the hang of working with each other. And, I think hopefully we're just going to keep building on it and have some better results for the rest of the season. But, really enjoying it. And like you said, I always like to come back down to the Lights grid and see how my the old team, Juncos Racing, is doing.
Can Can you give us some input on what is challenging these drivers right now? You ran here last year. What were the big things that you really had to work through, setup-wise and driving-wise here at Iowa?
It's a tough place. I mean, I think it's a bit different this year. I think they've kind of smoothened out turn 1 and 2, which was tricky last year with the big bump in turn 2, and then I guess now 3 and 4 is a little tricky. So I'm not quite sure what they're doing for that, but I remember, with it getting so hot here, it's kind of tough to keep the car underneath you. So, the harder it gets, it's just going to make it harder for the guys, and I think tomorrow's going to be a tough race.
Last year's start was pretty hectic. I assume you'll be out here to watch that.
Oh yeah, I'll be out here. I think I'll be up in the NBC booth for the broadcast. So I always try and catch the lights races when I can.
And thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Thanks, Rob.
Spencer Piggott, folks, as Nick said, this is a guy who has really shown what the Mazda Road to Indy can do. USF 2000, Pro Mazda, Indy Lights, race wins, championships, and again finds himself now running a majority of the season here this year in the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Mark James, the path is laid out. It's pretty simple. Well, I shouldn't say it's simple. It's actually quite challenging. But
he made it look simple.
If you want to get to the Verizon IndyCar Series and race in the Indianapolis 500, there is a surefire way to do it, and that's by picking up championships in the Mazda Road Indy ladder.
Well, and I think it was the allure of that that returned our good friend Zach Veach to the Indy Lights Series after being out of a race car essentially last year. Zach looking to get to the Verizon IndyCar Series, exhausted other opportunities that he was working very feverishly on. And he and Brian Bellardi had struck up a relationship. And, ifs and buts, but were it not for that brush with the turn 4 wall of the Freedom 100 and the electrical gremlins that shut him down in St. Pete, the points championship, Rob Howden, for Zach Veach right now would look a lot different than where he currently stands in 6th. But Rob, buoyed by a couple of podium finishes at Road America, he's now only 45 points back, so this could be a really big weekend for Zach.
I'll tell you, Mark, we talk all the time about confidence and momentum. These are young guys trying to work their way through the Mazda Road. They're trying to get to the Verizon IndyCar Series, and confidence and what they can do and confidence in their team is always so important. Of course, Zach had some issues in a couple of the races earlier in the year that weren't even of his own doing, some mechanical issues. But right now, coming off that fantastic weekend that he had at Road America, he's looking for something big here at Iowa Speedway. And I know you guys talk a lot about it when you have Zach up in the booth with you. He really loves being on the ovals. He'd almost say that I think he almost prefers being on the ovals. And if he can get something done here today, or tomorrow, they're going to be in really good shape. I talked to his race engineer, Kent Boyer. They said they made medium changes to the car heading into this afternoon's session here. They just brought him back in. He's back on the racetrack here with Sticker Cooper tires. This could be another qualifying simulation for Zach Veach at that number 5. Let's see if he finds some more speed as he continues to try to chase the guys from Carlin and Andretti. Yeah,
Jed Jones still at the top of the charts, and everyone chasing him right now, but it is Zach Veach second, quick, Kyle Kaiser third, Zachary Clayman DeMello fourth, Juan Pedrohita fifth. And while on the Verizon IndyCar Series side, there are a lot of Mazda Road to Indy graduates. There are 6 this weekend, Mazda Road to Indy champions that are on the grid. Gabby Chavez won the 2014 Indy Lights title. Jack Hawksworth was the 2012 Pro Mazda champion. Joseph Newgarden picked up the Lights title in 2011. Connor Daly won the Pro Mazda championship in 2010. And then, of course, Mark, the history of this feeder series, these Lights series, it is very strong. Scott Dixon was the Indy Lights champion in 2000. And how about the old guy, Tony Kanaan, the 1997 Indy Lights champion? So it has provided an opportunity for drivers to cut their teeth and gain some experience for a handful of decades now. And I know a lot of drivers love the benefits that they get from running in the Indy Lights series for many, many years.
He's about 12 years younger than me and a triathlete, so easy with the old guy stuff when referencing Tony.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But no, I think what Dan Anderson has done in his short time guiding the fortunes of this series. Now, admittedly, Pro Mazda is supposed to be here this weekend. The plug was pulled on that because of car counts. We explained that earlier today. We'll touch on it again, I'm sure, throughout the day tomorrow. They will add a race to the championship weekend at Mazda Raceway at Laguna Seca. But with the new car and engine package coming online, brighter days ahead for Pro Mazda. And I think now what's cool, Nick, is you can trace this ladder, as we've said, all the way back to karting, from there to the Verizon IndyCar Series. And it's a farm system that's set up very, very similar to Major League Baseball. Rarely can you make the comparison between motorsports and stick and ball sports, as we have a yellow for a track inspection. But I think it's very, very similar in terms of rookie league, Class A, AA, AAA, and now the major leagues. And they're to be commended to work in conjunction with the Verizon IndyCar Series to make all of this happen.
A lot of young kids, you see kids getting involved in karting at very young ages, really, but as soon as they can walk and talk, and to have the opportunity, if they stick with it, to get to the Verizon IndyCar Series with some hard work, a little luck, and certainly an opportunity in the Mazda Road to Indy ladder system. It is very, very cool, and as you've said, it's paid off for a lot of drivers. Yellow flag is out for a track inspection here at Iowa Speedway. Ed Jones is the fastest of the 13 drivers so far this weekend. He is the quickest at 162.5 at 17 miles per hour. Zach Veach, Rob Howden, still second quick at 161.3.
Yeah, Nick, as I was talking about him back there, he went out on that sticker tire run. They had actually laid down the rear wing a bit as well for Zach Veach, but they brought him in here with the yellow. He had actually come into pit lane before that yellow came out. He did that quick qualifying simulation, 2-lap sim, brought it down here into pit lane, and the feedback that he's given to Kent Boyer and the team has made them pull the front cowl off. They're actually going to make a spring adjustment on that car, put different springs in it. So again, that qualifying sim, there's a reason for it. It's not just to see how quickly you can roll it out. It's to get as much feedback as you possibly can from your driver and your race car. Veach did a good job there. Still sitting P2, but again, not the actual speed that they wanted. So they're making a couple of minor adjustments here to the car of Zach Veach.
And Jake Query, just one car for Belardi Auto Racing this weekend, and I think that could have its benefits. And you talked to a couple members of that team during the first practice session. They've got a lot of crew members down there all focused on that one-car effort of Zach Veach this weekend.
Thought it was funny when they said the biggest challenge for them this weekend is making sure they don't trip over one another, because they're not used to having so many on one car in the form of Zach Veach. Of course, Felix Rosenquist, the other that has been working along with Zach Veach for the majority of this season, that's not here this weekend. Brian Belardi also has yet to arrive here in Iowa this weekend, but certainly, as Mark had touched upon, Zach Veach is right there in the mix of things. So they have an opportunity, kind of like in the game of bowling, if you will. You come off of a strike or a spare, you want to make sure the next frame that you're going to capitalize and gain on what you were able to just do for your score. And in Zach Veach's case, he has an opportunity to do that after 2 podiums in Road America in Wisconsin, including a win. I'm looking in right now on the car of Kyle Kaiser, who has brought in that Yukos Racing car number 18. That caution came out for the track inspection just as he was going out after making an adjustment to the front wing of that car. Rob Howden mentioned earlier that he saw a lot of teams tightening up that wing, if you will. That was the adjustment that was made to Kyle Kaiser here the last time that he came in, and then as soon as he went back out onto this track at Iowa, that caution flew. So he came in. Right now, very little adjustment made to that car because, of course, they just had it set up to where they wanted to see what they could get out of it. He literally was just blending into the track when that caution came out. They brought him in, and as most of these teams have done because of a track inspection, did a very thorough once-over on all of those Cooper tires to make sure that none of that rubber was compromised by any debris that may have been on this track. But for you folks in Iowa, great race fans here, I know, and you love Heartland Racing. Kyle Kaiser, one of the bright young Americans here in the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires to keep an eye on as his career progresses. Rob Howden?
Jake, a couple of guys to watch out here for right now. This track inspection coming at a good time. 2 drivers bolting on sticker Cooper tires, so it'll be a qualifying simulation run for Heeman Choi in the Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports number 77, as well as the American driver Neil Alberico in the Carlin Racing number 22. Both of those drivers bolting on sticker Cooper tires. They'll go out for a 2-lap run. We're being told about a minute left to go here, so we'll see if Alberico can improve on his time. Currently sitting P6 as the Carlin crew giving him a great race car. Again, Alberico, a USF 2000 graduate, a Pro Mazda graduate, and now here in his very first year, the freshman in Indy Lights. We'll see if he can improve on a P6 run.
Mark, for these drivers that want to get some qualifying sims in with just under 24 minutes to go in this practice session, that becomes a little bit difficult at a 7/8 of a mile oval like Iowa Speedway. As soon as we go green, I would expect that if you want to go qualifying sim, you might want to get out there pretty quickly because all of a sudden you're in traffic pretty quickly here.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note the time of day. we set it about 5:36 Central Time, and qualifying is scheduled for noon tomorrow. And in terms of cars on the racetrack, that essentially starts it. I mean, there's some event rides with pace cars and the IndyCar two-seater. So, you've got the Arca cars tonight, the Verizon IndyCar Series, and I'm sure after the Arca race is completed, which runs 150 laps, I'm sure that they'll spend the evening and a fair part of tomorrow morning with blowers and the sweepers and whatnot, and try to do as much as they can to clean the surface. But going to be interesting to see if you hear anybody say the track when we get to qualifying tomorrow. It's going to be interesting to hear the driver's opinion on how much the track has changed from last night to noon Central tomorrow.
Green flag back out here at Iowa Speedway, and it was a mad dash to be the first car really to get off the pit exit lane and into turn number 3. That was Zach Veach, who kind of leads a 4-car train out of turn number 4. That is Veach in the red and white car. Behind him is the points leader Ed Jones in car number 11. Santi Urrutia in that soul red Mazda number 55 for Schmidt-Peterson Racing. And that 4th car in line for Team Pelfrey is Juan Pagenaud. And all 4 of those cars have been fast. Jones at the top of the charts. Veach is 2nd. Pagenaud is 5th. Urrutia is 9th quick as he still continues to try to get up to speed on those ovals. On the road and street courses, though, Mark, Santi Urrutia has been found a knack at it. And certainly at Road America, seeing him dominate that race 2 on Sunday was awful impressive.
Well, we can fold Rob Houghton into this conversation. And Rob had the opportunity to cover his mentor and driver coach, Eliseo Salazar. Eliseo, of course, has been very instrumental in the development of Santi Urrutia. And one thing's for sure, when that kid gets to victory lane, Eliseo is as happy as he was when he got to victory lane in the IndyCar Series in Las Vegas so many years ago. And I think Eliseo's done a great job of guiding the fortunes of this very talented young racer.
We definitely did some celebrating at Road America when Santi Urrutia brought the number 55 into victory lane there in Elkhart Lake. And you're right, Eliseo was absolutely over the moon thrilled. They're both emotional guys. Both Eliseo very emotional, as is Santi Urrutia. And it was interesting. We've seen the transition of this young driver from Uruguay. Last year in Pro Mazda, he was very, very controlled. One of his highlights was the fact that he was unbelievably consistent. Didn't let himself get flustered. Even if he had an issue, he settled in and really put in consistent results. This year, though, of course, just one step away from the Verizon IndyCar Series, I think there's more of a sense of urgency. He's battling very hard with some drivers. He kind of had the championship more in hand last year in terms of the fact that he had some great finishes, won some races, and was very consistent. He's up against an unbelievably stacked field this year, and they're pressing Santi very hard. As I said, though, a very emotional driver out of Uruguay. They've had some contact out on the racetrack, and he's definitely being challenged both on the racetrack and personally as well. And we're going to see what happens throughout this year, whether or not Santi can keep his emotions in check, because we know that Dean Stoneman, very stoic, as is Ed Jones, but the fiery nature of Santi Urrutia could be his undoing if he finds himself getting in any extra trouble. You already mentioned the fact that those 3 drivers are all on probation after the issues they've had with the race director, Tony Kottman. It'll be their time here to settle in and get focused.
It's more than a hand slap, Nick. If they don't do what they're supposed to do the way they're supposed to do it, a minimum of 10 points. And as we mentioned, 1 through 6 separated by 45. Those top 3, Stoneman 19 back, Urrutia 24 points back. A 10-point hit would be massive.
And you want to talk about the driver maturation process. That really kicks in here for those top 3 drivers that, as you mentioned, were placed on probation, because you have to push awful hard if you're going to win this championship. We just know, as tight as the points are here, as we've gotten past the halfway point of the season, I don't anticipate anyone walking away with this championship. It's just been too tight so far, Mark.
And maybe this was just what they needed when they needed it, because I don't know that they can drive as aggressively on this short track as they would on a road and street course, because obviously a different style of racing. But I don't know that among those 3 that this is necessarily yet in their wheelhouse. So maybe they'll be a bit more mindful. Don't want to take anything away from the race director, the officials in the Mazda Road to Indy, but I don't know that probation would be as much as a deterrent as it is the fact that, as we said, they're not going to be in their comfort zone this weekend.
Certainly got to take care of each other at a place like Iowa Speedway, where you're turning laps at over 160 miles per hour. We go to Toronto next week, and you get to beat and bang on each other a little bit on that street course. That may go out the window, but certainly, probation or not, the drivers in the top 5, and especially those 3 on probation in the top 3 in points, they're going to be pushing hard, really leaning on each other, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. A couple notes from pit lane. We'll start with Jake Query.
I just wanted to pass this along in case anybody in the stands here listening to us on the public address, or for that matter, if you're watching online and have noticed the rear of the 77 machine. That, of course, is the car of Heeman Choi, who's getting ready to head back out. He is indeed Korean. His sponsor is E-Daily, which is an online news website. Now, if you look at the rear of his car, oftentimes you see those puzzles where your eye looks at something and then the words come into you. I wasn't absolutely positive that wasn't what I was seeing here, but the reality is what you are seeing on the rear of that 77 machine is in the Korean alphabet, the symbol and the words for E-Daily, that website. So that's a nice sponsor plug for the back of that 77 machine. Rob?
Yeah, Jake, we're seeing down here a couple of qualifying sims. We talked about it a little bit earlier. I look up at the tower in the middle of the racetrack, and we see the number 22 of Neil Alberico finding some speed after putting the sticker Coopers on his car. So the Carlin Racing driver Alberico of Los Gatos, California must be very pleased. Currently P3. Looking down the order here as well, the number 2 of Juan Pedrahita has worked his way in here to the pit lane. He's currently in the 6th position. Pedrahita and the Team Pelfrey crew have bolted on brand new Cooper tires. So it's going to be a qualifying sim for Pedrahita. The interesting thing is that we've seen some adjustments. Every time they go for the qualifying sim, these teams are dropping the rear wing back a little bit. They're trying to pull that downforce off, give the thing as much top-end speed as possible. And even though he's down in 8th position right now, it is Dean Stoneman who's actually moved on to race sims. They actually put the rear wicker back on the rear wing to give him some more downforce. So just different ways everyone's approaching this practice session here this afternoon on a Saturday. Some guys late in the session, midway through the session, doing qualifying sims. Stoneman already thinking about the race tomorrow afternoon. Let's go back to Jake.
And along with that, Rob, that's a really good point. So I'm walking along and just looking to see, because I think you're onto it here, that some are going to go ahead and put on those sticker tires. But indeed, coming from the other end from where you were at pit road, I looked at Dean Stoneman, Dalton Kellett. They have very, very lightly scuffed Cooper tires at this point, but not yet going to those straight sticker tires that we see on that of Pedrahita, for example. So everybody trying, I think, some different things, taking advantage, even though this session was fractured just a bit by that track inspection and by the incident with Felix Cales at the beginning of this session. Reality is good quality time here to be able to go out and try a couple of different setups and try to find out exactly what works. On Rob, the reality is a track that is very, very difficult for their balance.
And certainly the wick gets turned up a bit when you get down to just 15 minutes to go in this practice session, and that is where we are at here at Iowa Speedway. So far, Ed Jones still the fastest at lap at 162.517 miles per hour. Zach Veach is second. And then Mark, as Rob mentioned, Neil Alberico, third quick. That's a nice sign for that young driver who we've all kind of gotten to know so far this season. He's had a tough season as a rookie in Indy Lights, but with Carlin Racing, they expect to win, and this is a nice sign to see him towards the top of the charts.
Well, we had a conversation with our good friend Andrew Scrone during the break in the action, and one of the things that he speculated too is that, Neil had been running for the same race team for the past couple of years, and he stepped outside of the box now a little bit, and a bit outside of his comfort zone. And, sometimes it just takes a while to get on the same page. Simon Pagenaud might know something about
Sure.
that. Simon had a good year, but not up to Penske standards, and people were head scratching a little bit. Well, 3 wins in a row and 5 poles now, including the one here. And now all of a sudden you're talking about a championship caliber driver once again in Simon Pagenaud. And then, we see it in all forms of sports. It takes a while for that chemistry to come together. And I think the timing couldn't be better for Neil Alberico. I mean, we've seen the results all throughout the course of his career, and we've all been a bit baffled. But I'm sure nobody wants to win and perform, at a higher level than he does. And we just hope for good things for that likable young man here this weekend. Let's get an update from Rob Howden. Juan Pedrejita currently running P3 in timing and scoring, Rob.
Yeah, Mark, I know people are watching timing and scoring and seeing that Juan has jumped that Team Pelfrey up to third spot. And I'll just give you the update. I talked about the fact that they had laid down the rear wing. They actually came to the front wing as well and laid those front wings down, the wing that's on both sides of the car. So they really trimmed out the number 2 for Pedrejita. We've talked about it earlier. He likes oval racing. He's very good at it. He was one of the only guys to be able to stay with Matthew Brabham in Pro Mazda in 2013 when he decimated the field at the Milwaukee Mile. Juan has always been pretty strong on these ovals. He likes them, and I like what's going on with that Team Pelfrey car. P3 for them right now, fully trimmed out car. They put it in the hands of Juan and said, you know what, go show us what you have for qualifying.
And for those that are getting a chance to watch online, you're seeing Juan Pedrejita ducks off of the back straightaway underneath the yellow line. He's going to bring that bright yellow Team Pelfrey Mazda to pit lane to the service of that crew. Just a one-car effort so far this weekend for Team Pelfrey. It's been 2 cars for a majority of the season, but Juan Pedrejita, he is their one sole focus so far this season as he will make his way down towards pit lane. Now, pit lane looks pretty busy. About half the cars down there, about half out on the racetrack. In fact, we see Dalton Kellett swing to the outside of Zachary Clayman DeMello in turn number 1. That closing rate of speed was awful quick as they entered turn number 1. And Mark, that's something that for a lot of these drivers, they get in these race cars, they continue moving up from karts to the USF 2000, the Pro Mazda cars. The horsepower difference that they start to feel in the Indy Lights cars, it's one thing to handle those cars, but the closing rate of speed, especially on the ovals, is something that, quite honestly, you have to learn on the fly.
Well, Zach Veach said he was surprised in the horsepower and the response of these cars when he climbed into them for the first time. And you're talking about a guy who got a lot of seat time, but it was in the old Indy Lights chassis and power plant. And he said, yeah, it certainly takes some time to get up to a comfort level. And I think what's going to be interesting, not only in the Verizon IndyCar Series race, but certainly in the Lights race, while certainly the field is at 13, you're not going to be very deep into the race at all until you're going to have to start negotiating traffic. I don't know. I think it's going to be difficult because of that for a driver to pull away. However, that said, by and large, over the past few years in the Indy Lights Series, boy, if you start up front, you really got to make a mistake that is almost self-inflicted in order to not finish. If not P1, then certainly on the podium. Up front is certainly the place to be, week in and week out in every series. But those that start from the pole seem to have a charmed existence when it comes to racing in the Indy Lights Series.
Got some pretty heavy hitters out of the racetrack right now. Zach Veach is one of them. He's turning laps out there, as is Ed Jones as he's making his way down the back straightaway. Keeping an eye on Dean Stoneman, our most recent winner on an oval, and boy, he did it in thrilling fashion at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, nipping Ed Jones by just mere inches at the line at the end of that race. He's running about 10 to 12 car lengths behind Neil Alberico. Both of those drivers having pretty good sessions. For Neil Alberico, he's been knocked back to 4th quick. For Stoneman, he is 8th quick, but as Rob Howden talked about, they're working more on race sims. So those 2 drivers making their way down the back straightaway. We've also got 2 or 3 drivers setting up for turn number 1. Dalton Kellett really pounding the pavement in this practice session. He's turned 41 laps, still just 12th quick. Back to pit lane and Rob Howden.
Yeah, Nick, P10 right now for the number 55 of Santiarutia, one of our winners from Road America. Well, they bolted on their race sim setup. They've got new Cooper tires on the machine. They pushed the rear wing down, and now they're going to work on both of the front wing flaps. Everything we've seen from every other driver and team up and down the paddock, getting him ready for a qualifying sim to see what he can do. P10 right now for Arrutia, the Uruguayan, and the number 55. I expect to see him jump up the order when he heads out onto the racetrack.
Ed Jones, our points leader, has brought that number 11 bright blue Mazda for Carlin Racing to pit lane. And they've got some sort of debris on the left front tire. They've got some crew members pulling away. I don't know exactly what that was, whether it was a wrapper, some sort of a banner that got on the racetrack. It kind of wrapped itself around the left front suspension parts and around the wheel. So they brought in that number 11 car to make sure that there was nothing wrong with it. Jones will go right back out onto the racetrack. But Mark, that's never a good feeling when you're turning laps, 150, 160 laps, and all of a sudden you got debris in your car.
No, noticeable for sure. And, not much wind out there, Rob Howden, but what debris there was flying around, he seemed to find it.
Yeah, I got a plastic bag in my hand here, guys. It's all ripped up and torn to shreds. Got cut up in the front of the car of Ed Jones, and that happens on the racetrack. We've seen it happen before. Pablo Montoya got a garbage bag on his tires there in qualifying for the Indianapolis 500. And Ed Jones, nice little plastic bag here, practice at Iowa Speedway.
Pretty bizarre, but the good news for Ed Jones, that car is still awful fast at the top of the charts. Nobody's even come close to that 162.517 mile per hour lap that he turned really in the opening moments of this session. Zach Veach is second quick, Juan Pedrohita is third, Neil Albarico is fourth. That talented American driver that Jake Query talked about, Kyle Kaiser, is fifth. Zachary Clayman DeMello is sixth. So those Juncos Racing drivers, fifth and sixth right now, Mark Janes. That team, Ricardo Juncos, they pick up the championship in their first full year a year ago with Spencer Pigot. Their commitment to Indy Lights and to making their way up into the Mazda Road to Indy and maybe ultimately the Verizon IndyCar Series has been pretty impressive so far in such a short time.
Well, I think they brought some people on board for their initial effort into the Indy Lights Series that had some experience. But again, as experienced as they might have been, a lot of that came with the old chassis engine formula. But this is a race team that's had a lot of success at a lot of levels throughout Europe. And what I liked is the way that they carried themselves almost from the beginning. I mean, they had an impressive stable of drivers when they arrived on the scene over a year ago now in St. Petersburg. But even with the success that they had winning the first couple of races right out of the gate, Trevor Carlin, for one, he knew that there would come a time where they would get a reality check. That came shortly after that, as a matter of fact. But I just think from top to bottom, there's a lot of things to be impressed about in the way that they run this operation. We talked about it earlier today during the first Indy Lights show that we had. I think what we're seeing now that is pleasing to me, Juncos Racing building a facility in Speedway, Indiana, and other race teams that call that part of the state of Indiana home in the shadows of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But we've got an issue in turn 4.
Oh, and it is one of those Juncos Racing machines. It is Kyle Kaiser. Kaiser has smacked the outside wall here in turn number 4 with that blue and white Intervision number 18 Mazda. Some heavy front end damage. The front wing is torn off. The right front tire suspension is heavily damaged. The Homatro safety crew is there. They are talking to Kaiser, and he was moving around in the cockpit. In fact, Kaiser just popped that steering wheel off, and he is climbing out of that machine. So Kyle Kaiser is okay. Mark Janes, as we get to see a replay, that car is not. Boy, it stepped out on him coming out of turn number 4. He tried to correct it and turned back to the outside wall. Mark, some drivers can catch it, but boy, it is awful hard and a rough situation for Kyle Kaiser as his car has come to a stop just to the left of our booth.
Yeah, that's not a soft wall. It's a safer barrier, and there's a difference. And I don't know that it was labeled right when it was first developed, but it certainly did its job there. Did a number on the car, but certainly absorbed the energy from that impact. And the important thing is that Kyle Kaiser is okay, and going to be a bit longer night for his crew guys once they get that car back to the paddock.
Wondering if this is going to do it for the session. Still 4.5 minutes to go, but look like a pretty good cleanup, Jake Query, that we're going to have in turn number 4 for the accident involving Kyle Kaiser.
Headed over here now to the Infield Care Center, and we will try to get a word with Kaiser should he come over here shortly, which I would anticipate is going to be the case. Hopefully he's okay. As Rob had mentioned, he got out of the car. I just think it's worth noting, Rob, clearly at this track this year, turn 4, as the checkered flag on this session comes out, Rob, turn 4 clearly is where you seem to get the most disruption of balance of your car. based on what the drivers have told us and based on what we've seen between Marco Andretti, who has won here before, Ryan Hunter-Reay, who made contact earlier, Andretti nearly lost the car, and now this incident, all of them happening in the same area, and that is in that turn 4 area.
Yeah, you know, Jake, when I talked to the guys back in the paddock, they let me know that coming through turn 3 and 4, it's not like a huge full bump. It's almost like the car just wants to get the compression as it works through those bumps, but the car does start to shimmy up the racetrack a little bit. And again, as these guys are pushing, maybe the tire's starting to go away a little bit. They're trying to roll as much corner speed as they can. We talk about the fact that you got to be faster in here. You got to be flat out. You have to be full throttle all the way around this racetrack. When drivers push that hard to make sure they get that done first, that's when you can have an issue. And of course, all it takes is a car to kind of step out there. We saw it in the IndyCar Series, and we saw it here as well in the Indy Lights. And you're right, Jake, tough one here for Kyle Kaiser.
We'll give our pit reporters a chance to attempt to line up somebody. I know Rob Howden is still on pit side. Jake Query went back to the medical center. We might get a chance before we get off the air here to hear from Kyle Kaiser. That is going to do it for the session here at Iowa Speedway for the Indy Lights Series. They'll go qualifying again tomorrow morning at noon local, 1 o'clock Eastern. So it's going to be an early day, an early start to the day for the Indy Lights Series, and then they'll go racing just a couple hours later. So it's going to be awful interesting. Jones is going to end the session quickest at 162.517. Santi Urrutia is second. Zach Veach is third. Kyle Kaiser was fourth. Jake Query, I guess he will end the session fourth after that accident in turn number 4.
Here is the good news. The IndyCar response vehicle for the Homatro safety team just pulled in here, and the response to Kyle Kaiser, while I'm sure disappointing, was positive. Got out of the car on his own, even turned around, gave a slight grin to the Homatro safety crew before walking into for the mandatory check-through at the care center under his own power and without any sign of stress whatsoever. Rob?
Yeah, Jake, standing here with Zach Veach. Zach, that was a team effort. Not only you on the racetrack, but they did a ton of work to this number 5 throughout that session. The Cowles were out there making changes. You did a qualifying sim. You end up, I believe, P3. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think these guys probably want to hit me with something right now as much as I was having them change this race car. But, yeah, no, I think we really built our library up with things that we want to think about tomorrow going to qualifying. To end up P3, you know, we're pretty happy with that. You know, just a lot of progress made from the first session. But these Bilardi Auto Racing guys, they know how to get a car done. So I got to thank them for doing that for me. I'm really excited to see how tomorrow goes.
Good qualifying sim. How is the race car in terms of a longer distance run?
Honestly, I think we have a better race car than we do qualifying car right now. So the race, I'm actually really excited that because, you know, I'm hoping we can get in, you know, some traffic, have some good battles, make it exciting for the people that come and watch us. But qualifying-wise, I think we also have a good car there, so it's kind of a win-win right now. We just got to make sure that we make the right small changes tonight and nothing too dramatic that's going to take it away from us.
Hey, one more question. You're going to have some extra fans watching you, I know, this weekend. You did a Racing for Kids deal at the local hospital. Talk about that a little bit.
Oh, man, it's just associated with Racing for Kids. You know, I've been doing visits ever since my actually first time here at Iowa was my very first visit with them in 2010, I believe. So just to go to the hospital and, you know, meet those kids that are, you know, having their own struggles as they're there, and you put a smile on their face, and that's really rewarding. And, you know, for me, now that I have a 2-year-old brother, it's, you know, you really relate with these kids. So maybe one day we'll be able to do more and more and have them, watch them grow and come to the racetrack as fans for life now.
Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Lots and lots of fans for this young American driver to Stockdale, Ohio, folks. Zach Veach doing a pretty good job here today, P5 after his qualifying sim.
So Ed Jones will end the session, our points leader at the top of the charts. Again, the remaining schedule this weekend for the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires. All these times are Central. For tomorrow, they'll go qualifying at noon Central. Myself, Davey Hamilton, Michael Young, Rob Howden will have the call of qualifying. That's going to fly by with 13 cars buzzing around this place at 160-plus miles per hour. And then the Indy Lights Series, they'll go green Sunday at 2:15 Central. We'll have the entire crew up. Going to be awful fun to see some of the future stars of the Verizon IndyCar Series turn 115 laps here at Iowa Speedway. One more show on the dock here for the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network. That's going to come up here in just about 15 minutes. It'll be IndyCar Happy Hour. Mark Janes, Michael Young will be joining in the booth. Jake Query will be down on pit lane as we put the finishing touches in terms of open wheel racing here at Iowa Speedway. Great job by Rob Howden and Jake Query on pit lane. Lane. Thanks to Mark Janes and the entire IndyCar radio technical crew as we're wrapping up a lengthy day as preparations continue for the Iowa Corn 300 weekend here at Iowa Speedway.
This is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has won his 4th 500-mile race. A.J. Foyt, our winner. The flag will fly now for Tom Sneva and then for Al Unser. We will be talking with all of these drivers in just a moment. Lou Palmer is in victory lane as A.J. Foyt takes now his victory lap around the 2.5 miles of Indianapolis. A record-breaking end to a record-breaking month. A.J. Foyt, the 4th win at Indianapolis. A month that saw the 200-mile-an-hour barrier broken, not just in the practice where it is unofficial, but in the qualifying by Tom Sneva, our second-place car at the moment. And then, too, the first woman to enter, to qualify, and to compete in a 500-mile race, Janet Guthrie of New York City. But for the moment, the name is A.J. Foyt of Houston, Texas. The car is his, a Coyote. The engine is his, a Foyt V8. And happiness, fame, and fortune are his, too. He is the winner of the 61st running of the Indianapolis 500. Pat Sedan continues to display the checkered flag to the 11 other cars running on the race course at the moment. They hand him now the red flag. He will use that in just minutes to stop the race, to bring the cars into the pits. The 500-mile race is complete. The checkered flag and the red flag are waved together. And the checkered flag was displayed first here for A.J. Foyt. He is now on the pit lane. The people are moving out to his car as he comes down through the pits. A very elated crew has begun to run toward victory lane to meet A.J. and to meet Lou Palmer. A.J. cruises through the pit area very, very slowly toward the new victory lane in the front of the master control tower here. Ever so slow he comes down. But A.J. Foyt no longer has need for the speed of that V8 Coyote engine. He is the winner here at Indianapolis. And now to interview the winner of this year's Indianapolis 500 here in victory lane is Lou Palmer.
And we await A.J. Foyt along with a host of others, including Tony Holman, who was cheering as loudly as the crowd. We've seen what has never been seen before, beginning with a woman driving in the field in the morning and A.J. finishing 4 up front at Indianapolis. Headed into victory lane now, A.J. Foyt in the gleaming Gilmore 14 Coyote, the Gilmore Racing Team home, and he wins again.
It's race day, 1980. The place is the world's greatest race course, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This is the 64th running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race. At this moment, hundreds of thousands of spectators file into this giant and ancient speedway. As the sun began to light the eastern sky early this Indiana morning, aerial bombs shattered the stillness of the dawn and signaled the opening of the gates. For over 5 hours now, the crowd has poured through those gates. Before the green flag falls, in just over 40 minutes, the crowd is expected to swell to well over 300,000. Each year, these fans make their pilgrimage to the center of Indiana. They come from around the world. They are joined in heritage only gained by almost 7 decades of history. Many of these fans wear the bright colors reflected by the cars driven by their favorites. The grandstands, stretching for miles, are a kaleidoscope of bright color. Their spirits are high. They're here to open a new decade of racing at Indianapolis. This day is bright and blue. The temperature is 74 degrees. The forecast is for clear and sunny weather. Seconds ago, you joined race fans around the world. At this moment, the sounds of Indianapolis beam out from transmitters across the United States. Shortwave transmitters and satellites fling our words across the oceans and around the globe. You join us in a singular
IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has won his 4th 500-mile race. A.J. Foyt, our winner. The flag will fly now for Tom Sneva and then for Al Unser. We will be talking with all of these drivers in just a moment.
And we await A.J. Foyt, along with a host of others, including Tony Holman, who was cheering as loudly as the crowd. We've seen what has never been seen before, beginning with a woman driving in the field in the morning, and A.J. finishing 4 up front at Indianapolis. Headed into victory lane now, A.J. Foyt in the gleaming Gilmore 14 Coyote, the Gilmore Racing Team home, and he wins again.
And there's the checkered flag for Mark Donahue, winner of the 1972 Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Oh my goodness, we have 7, 8, 10 cars in a pack headed for one Jerry.
Well, you talk about the crowd getting on their feet. They do. So far, so good. They are nose to tail. A little bit of room. There's about an 8-car pack in front of Gary Lee right now.
Yeah, and in that pack, second place and third place. Little Al has gotten around Jack Villeneuve. He's back up to second, and now 2 cars separate second and third. Mr. Excitement is that youngster, that second-generation driver. We're impressed with Jack Villeneuve, but right now he's dropped to third. And there's Al Unser Jr. and then Bobby Rahal. Jack Villeneuve goes on the outside. He goes side. You can't go too wide in the turns. They're doing it today.
They sure are coming through 4. Now they go single file. Maybe they got a little scared last time. Who knows? But going through 4 this time, everybody's single. They come towards the main straightaway, and Bob Jenkins.
That was just a breathtaking moment.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
The sound that'll attack ya.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now, perfectly aligned, back on the main straightaway to call the start of the greatest spectacle in racing, the voice of the 500, Paul Page.
Oh, they came off of turn 4 beautifully. They looked for the green flag. The green flag is out. And from the center of the road, James Hinchcliffe pulls away. Power tried to duck over behind him, but Hinchcliffe is in front.
They must have found something with that car because he was not happy with the balance, not happy with the amount of horsepower he could have during that first run. Marco slides that bright yellow and blue Snapple car into pit lane. The fueler will engage the hose and the 4 tire changers will go to work. Marco has charged to the front. His grandfather won in 1969. A good pit stop for Andretti as he exits pit lane.
Hunter Ray swung past on the inside of that Carpenter. Marco Andretti in third, then Scott Dixon, Elio Castroneves. That's the front 5 in the turn number 3, Marching.
Not sure on restarts that up front is the place to be because of what happens with the slipstream, if you will. And Carpenter right there. Marco Andretti, then Scott Dixon, then Elio Castroneves. Front 5 set sail for the north end.
Hunter Ray trying to trap Carpenter going into 1.
And Carpenter on the outside. Ryan Hunter Ray on the inside. Hunter Ray will make the pass again. And Marco Andretti stays in the number 3 spot. He may want number 2.
Once again as the voice of the 500.
Less than half a lap ago. Gordy Johncock by 5 car lengths over Rick Mears. They're in the north short chute. Here they come. This is the final quarter lap. Johncock maintains the lead. The voice of the 500, Paul Page. Who's going to win?
Gordon Johncock off the 4th turn. Mears is right behind him. Johncock. Mears makes a try. Johncock wins it by less than 1/10 of a second. Gordon Johncock has won his second 500. Rick Mears comes across in second place, almost side by side. And you should see the celebration that is taking place in the Patrick Racing pits. An incredible celebration now as they run down toward victory lane. What a finish.
Let's see what happens with the 68. He's going to climb the fence. He is out of the car, and Elio Castroneves climbs the fence in the front straight.
IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network. IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Sebastian Bourdais took a look to the outside of Ryan Hunter-Reay, but Ryan Hunter-Reay shut the door. Ryan Hunter-Reay already leads this field. Everybody safely through turn number 1 in Long Beach.
Yeah, guys, we got both 6th and 5th place in. Mike Conway all the way down to 21st. A little problem with the front left. Elio Castroneves also down and away. 2 good stops. Let's go down to Nick Yeoman.
Yeah, Will Power gives up the 4th position. He pits as well. He'll beat Conway off of pit lane as well as Hawksworth. A routine stop, though, for Will Power as he's down and away.
And down onto Shoreline Drive coming down the back straight. He's got to dodge the manhole covers on the brakes. One last time. He successfully negotiates that. Goes through turn 9, coming up to turn 10 and into Yorkview, Mark James.
Mike Conway driving for Ed Carpenter. Paul Page, Ed Carpenter's going to step out of the car on road and street courses and step into victory lane, the 40th anniversary of Long Beach.
The checkered flags, twin checkers. Mike Conway has scored the win here and what has proven to be an amazing day.
This is IndyCar. From the Iowa Speedway in Newton, Iowa, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
The nation's heartland, Iowa, home of the Iowa Corn 300 for the Verizon IndyCar Series. Not far from Des Moines, close to Newton, Grinnell, not far from the storied Knoxville National home racetrack. Again, Iowa Speedway, the venue. The 11th of 16 races on the season, and Michael Young joins me in the broadcast booth. And Michael, final warm-up before we go racing tomorrow night.
A very, very interesting qualification session, and many of the drivers, as they finished up with that morning practice session, said we were just caught off. It got a lot warmer by the time the afternoon qualification session came. Tony Kanaan actually said, I didn't even change a thing on the car, went 2 miles an hour slower. For some, it boded very well that they made the correct changes. For others, not so well. I think a big surprise, James Hinchcliffe starting dead last in the field. A lot of struggles for the Andretti Autosport guys. To see a team that's been so dominant here at Iowa Speedway to be where they are in this starting grid, it really shows and bodes of the struggles. And as you had talked to Kyle Moyer, I think interesting that he had said it's just an entirely different place than what we've known in the past. And when you're coming in here as successful as that team has been, to start the weekend off totally lost in where the cars need to go and how to tune them and dial them in, it has to be frustrating.
30-minute session, and what Michael is referencing is the fact that in years past, 1 and 2 has been the point of contention, about the midway point between those two turns. This year, because of some damage done the weekend the Xfinity Series was here, a couple of patches placed on the racetrack between 3 and 4. Now, everyone is giving the repairs made to the area between 1 and 2 rave reviews. Some IndyCar officials telling us earlier today they should send these guys out and have them fix racetracks all over the country. That's how good they are at fixing those bumpy spots between 1 and 2. But now 3 and 4, there are 2 patches down there, a couple of them, in fact. Michael, the second one is essentially where the issue is, because there's a dip in the middle of it, so it's higher on each end. And again, you referenced the conversations we had in the paddock with Kyle Moyer of Simon Pagenaud's team earlier today. He said, simply put, if you are to the high side in that middle groove and someone is running the bottom of the racetrack and they hit that patch, you're going to get some company because it's going to shoot them right up the racetrack.
We're watching cars go through that area of the circuit right now, the entrance of turn number 3, those back-to-back patches right there. And certainly you see just a slight dip. The cars make a small wiggle, if you will, as they go through that area, as we just saw Carlos Munoz go through and had a bit of a bobble as he went through that area. But it's interesting as this practice session, the early morning practice session has gone on, we've seen cars start to work their way up the track, not the normal racing line around the Iowa Speedway 7/8 of a mile facility, that as these practice sessions have moved on and drivers trying to figure out the best way to get through turns 3 and 4 with the repairs in 1 and 2 being as good as they are, starting to work their way through as we watch Graham Rahal come through turn 4 right now. Missed those patch spots completely, running very high coming out through the turn.
Middle groove might be the safest option, Michael, even though it's certainly not the fastest.
No, but in a situation that we looked at, with the bump down in turn number 3 and those patches down there, as you had mentioned, the drivers need to find a more stable way to get around this circuit. Got a nice little battle working their way through turn number 4 right now. That's the machine of Will Power, and I believe that's Takuma Sato. Indeed it was, as they make their way through the short chute here that basically not even much of a front straightaway at all. These guys are running through the turns pretty much the entire time. A nice back straightaway. Got a minute to breathe, but boy, to get around this place in 17 seconds, you have to be on your toes.
Rarely, if ever, will that wheel be straight, certainly, throughout the race tomorrow. All 300 laps, in fact. Earlier today, Michael Young was down on pit road for Verizon IndyCar Series qualifying, along with Rob Howden and Nick Yeoman. And we caught up with a couple of these drivers after successful qualifying runs. Max Chilton won here a year ago at the Indy Lights Series, and a good qualifying run for the likable rookie. He'll start outside of row number 2. Michael Young caught up with Max Chilton after his qualifying run.
You were a winner last year in the Indy Lights. This place treats you very well. Currently on the outside of row number 2. Talk about the run.
Yeah, it was something I'm pretty happy with. I think I was the only car out of the Ganassi's cars to test here last week. I think that might have made a difference. In practice, it didn't seem to make a difference. But I think it's just given us that edge in qualifying. And, credit to the team. They gave me a car to do the job. When I qualified here on pole last year in the Lights, the thing was too loose, and today it was too loose. But I think that's just the way it's got to be around here. You've got to be right on the ragged edge, and hopefully we can now find a car which is a bit more stable for the race tomorrow.
Laps in the neighborhood of 179 miles per hour as we are into this final practice session, about 6 minutes in fact, your top 10. Tony Kanaan, Joseph Newgarden, Elio Castro Neves, Sebastian Bourdais, Charlie Kimball, Mikel Aloshin 7th quick. Then Ed Carpenter, Takuma Sato was 8th quick. Graham Rahal, Scott Dixon, your top 10 as preparations continue for tomorrow's Iowa Corn 300.
The best drivers on earth aren't going to push the limits of man and machine riding on just any old piece of rubber. Which is why Firestone is the tire of the Verizon IndyCar Series. So when it's time to celebrate the 100th running of the Indy 500, no one knows more about celebrating than the tire that has more Indy wins than anyone else. Because at Firestone, we don't just make tires. We make champions. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
From the Firestone broadcast booth at the Iowa Speedway, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Not going to be for the faint of heart tomorrow night for the Iowa Corn 300. Michael Young, we're seeing packs of race cars. They're setting the cars up for the draft, and both the ABC supply cars from A.J. Foyt, Juan Montoya involved in, for lack of a better term, a bit of a scrum. We see Graham Rahal in that mix as well, along with Elio Castroneves, Mikel Aloshin, and others.
I was a little nervous for Graham Rahal just a second ago as he and Joseph Newgarden were battling down between 1 and 2. Joseph got down low, trying to make the pass on the inside as Graham went high, and Joseph had his hands full. The car washed up into turn number 2. He was able to save it. And as you had just mentioned, Juan Montoya was leading a pack of cars out of turn number 2, and it looked like he just wasn't up to speed, and about 5 and 6 cars came down on him as they exited turn number 2, and they got bunched up, and it looked like a hairy moment there for a second. Got up on the seat here a little bit, was hoping everybody could keep things straightened up, and indeed they did, but a scary moment there a couple of laps ago.
Third member of our broadcast crew is Jake Query. Hello, Jake.
Hello, Mark. You know, I'm sitting here watching the car and the crew of Ryan Hunter-Reay, that 28 oh-so-familiar DHL machine that we have seen over the years racing here in the Verizon IndyCar Series. Andretti Autosport, quite frankly, they've been good here. This has been a great track, for example, for Marco Andretti. He has 4 different podium finishes in Iowa. As you take a look at him, if you're watching the video boards at Marco Andretti right now, as a matter of fact, Marco Andretti has a win here as well, but the team flat did not have a setup that was agreeable with them this morning. Andretti got loose in the first practice session. Ryan Hunter-Reay made contact very shortly thereafter. Andretti right now 19th on the speed charts in this session, 2 behind his teammate in the form of Ryan Hunter-Reay, who himself 2 behind the teammate of Carlos Munoz, who was running in the 15th position. Then you have Alexander Rossi, the 4th of that quartet, 21st. So they're staggered out on the speed charts in the bottom quarter or so right now. Now, of course, you don't know what setup they might be working on. It wouldn't be a qualifying setup, obviously, but in terms of maybe just trying to see how the car feels in different conditions out on this track. But Mark, the reality is the team made no bones about the fact they were frustrated with the way the cars were set up, and in particular in qualifying. The balance that they're working on right now with Ryan Hunter-Reay, a spring adjustment to the front of the car. That's been a common theme for these teams so far this weekend here in Iowa. Don't rule out this team, of course. A lot can happen, Mark, but the reality is that team still is trying to find a sweet spot on these cars.
Marco Andretti has not won since here, June 25th of 2011, and he currently finds himself 17th in points. Elio Castroneves, Roger Penske, neither have gone to victory lane here at Iowa. Both hope to change that this weekend. Pagenaud being on pole might help. Elio Castroneves with a good run. He'll start on the inside of row number 2. Michael Young cut off with Elio after his qualifying run.
2-time pole sitter here. Not going to get it this time, but you had a good car.
Yeah, I know the car. Hitachi car is fast. Since we tested here a week ago, the car seems to be really in good shape. We practiced a little bit of qualifying this morning and felt comfortable. Show is out there. Unfortunately, with Team Penske guys, it was 7, 8, 9, 10, and we were all like, okay, whoever's going to go last, we might have a great chance here. And Simon did a good job, and together with my teammates, Will and Juan Pablo. So we're right up there, and that's where we need to stay. Still a lot of fast cars out there, but hopefully we stay in the top 2 and see what happens.
Michael, I think this session important for a couple of reasons. I think, first of all, to help those who struggled with qualifying find out if they can go back to that old setup maybe that was beneficial for them in the first session this morning, or maybe try something totally different, or maybe that setup that worked during qualifying will be an effective race setup since the conditions are very similar to what we'll race under tomorrow. But again, I think additionally it's just good to get some laps under, as we said, as we've got caution on the course, under race conditions as this yellow comes out for debris.
Haves and have-nots is basically what we're seeing in this final practice session, and certainly one of the have-nots is Marco Andretti. He'll qualify and start the race on the inside of row number 10, and I watched him struggling lap after lap out there. The car would wash up off turn number 4. He tried a couple of cars. Montoya tried to get below him down to turn number 1. Car washed up there. They're sitting on pit lane right now. Marco currently sits 21st on the timing and scoring chart. And then there's a guy like Sebastian Bourdais. They said in the qualifying session flat out missed the setup when they went out. The weather kind of caught them off, the warmer temperatures, and Bourdais really did not have a good qualifying session at all, but has a good car in this final practice session. Currently sits P4. His best lap, a lap of 177.239 miles an hour. And for Sebastian Bourdais, starting way back in the pack on the outside of row number 8.
It's going to be a quick cleanup, and we'll get back to action here momentarily. We're about 10 minutes, almost 11 minutes into the session with 18 to go. And again, as we mentioned, final warm-up session before we go racing tomorrow. Question is, can anyone, Michael Young, catch Simon Pagenaud, or is this a championship that he will have to lose?
Well, you think about Simon's year that he's had. It's truly been one of those magical things, and the races that he has not been successful, not of his own making. A couple of engine situations, fuel strategy in one of the other races that cost him at the end. But this is a very key race for him. He started his first time here with a top 5 finish. Then he finished 6th the second year, still with Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports. Then he finished 11th. Last year he finished 14th. So each time he returns to Iowa Speedway, the success not what he found in years past. Now obviously there were certain race and fuel strategies in a couple of those races, but for him to get through this one is key. As we get set to go to Toronto next weekend, we expect him to be extremely good on the streets of Toronto. If he can get out of here with a top 5 finish, it's going to be extremely difficult to catch him. You got Will Power right there in third position right now, in third place in the points. You think about his season. Missed out on St. Petersburg with that illness, had the pole, wasn't able to race, and he's still right there in the hunt. So for Simon Pagenaud, slow and steady will win the race, and he keeps finishing on the podium. He's going to be hard to catch.
But I don't think that they want to live precariously close to the edge by simply going points racing. I think the mindset simply must be we're going to come into every race weekend and not simply be satisfied with the podium. It's got to be totally and completely upon just simply winning the race, because if you do that, nobody's going to catch you.
And I think that's the way, as I had an opportunity to talk to him during qualifying as he got finished and he got the pole. It's just one of those, I said, magical season for him. He goes, don't really think about it. We've got to go racing tomorrow. So that's what he is focused on, is winning the race, and has just been fantastic to see how successful he is. Because you think about last year, we thought, man, he's going into Penske Racing, he's just going to dominate. He will be one of the drivers that potentially could win every race last year, and it just had a mediocre year at best after coming from Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports. He has that time to gel. He and Kyle Moyer have some time to get each other's vibes and be able to work with his engineers, and he's just totally fits in this Penske package right now. He's tough to beat, and he's confident, and he's extremely good.
Well, I think certainly winning 3 races in a row, you can look at that and see that as certainly the key to winning. Even if he doesn't win another race and still wins the championship. But I think furthermore, a very important statistic when you start to break it down. Okay, 19th in the 500, 13th in the first Belle Isle race, 13th at Road America, but Michael, 2nd at St. Pete, 2nd at Phoenix, 2nd at Belle Isle. If he wins a tight championship race, he may look at those 3 runner-up finishes as the key to this championship.
Well, you look at St. Petersburg. I remember him on victory podium, and it was one of those situations where he and Montoya, they had some good battles there in St. Pete, and Juan said, hey, we had good battles, didn't we? And Simon looked at him and said, yeah, but you could tell he wanted to win. He wanted to be on the top step of that podium and was upset he didn't win in St. Petersburg. So comes out of that, a good race for him at Phoenix. So a top 10 finish, and then, as you said, he went on that streak of wins that he had. 2 seconds, 3 first, that 19th and 13th, again, not of his own making, able to do a fantastic job at Belle Isle in race number 2. Road America, had an opportunity to win there, and then the engine started to go south on him. It has just been one of those dominating seasons, yet Helio Castroneves and Will Power are still in the hunt.
Pagenaud, Newgarden, Castroneves, Bourdais, and Pagenaud, your top 5 with about 15 minutes left in this session. No one can ever question the toughness of Hendersonville, Tennessee's Joseph Newgarden, currently 5th in points. Gave it a spirited ride at Road America, still banged up with that broken clavicle, still has the sore hand, and yet after qualifying was done today, he found himself on the outside of the front row. Nick Yeoman caught up with Joseph Newgarden.
That's a good run, though, provisionally right now on the outside of the front row.
Yeah, it's great. I think you always wish you had a little more when you're sitting second, right? But that's the beauty of hindsight. I think we did everything we could with our information, and it's tough. I didn't get the test, but JR did such a great job last week for us. Got the car in an awesome place. It just we missed it by a whisker there. So hopefully we can hold on to second place. But we have a great race car. Should be a pretty good starting spot, and I think we really have an opportunity to make something happen. We've had 2 good races here over the last couple years, and I think we've got another shot to hopefully capitalize on a win this time around.
Quick health update. 2 weeks after gritting it through at Road America, how's the hand and the shoulder?
Shoulder's good. A couple more weeks, and I think we'll be close to fully healed on the bone side of that. And then the hand's still broken, but it's getting there. It's much better 2 weeks after Road America. Still hurts, but it's just gonna be a long night. It's a physical track, so it'll be a long night on the right hand, but I'll be fine.
Michael Young, you got to go down to the 7th quick to find a Honda. Alotion, Hunter Ray back-to-back there in 7th and 8th, then a couple of Chevys. So that's 8 of the top 10 belong to the bow ties here in this final warm-up.
They are dominant, and one of those situations where we may see fuel play into the race tomorrow. The Honda's getting a little bit of fuel mileage here at Iowa Speedway. Wow, Marco just had another moment out there in turn number 2. He's bringing it back down into pit lane, just struggling here in this practice session. We thought we might see that, kind of a repeat of what we saw in Phoenix. We'll see how things fare out tomorrow night. I still don't want to count the Andretti's out, but certainly at this point in the weekend, they are struggling.
Michael, Carlos Munoz was fastest, qualified on the inside of row number 8. Rossi starts behind him on the inside of row number 9. Marco Andretti on the inside of row 10, and then Ryan Hunter-Reay next to him. All 4 cars back.
And Marco was frustrated. Talked to Marco. He just, talking about the manufacturer, and it just, they're certainly struggling out there. And you have Mikhail Alotion, the quickest Honda thus far. He and Ryan Hunter-Reay, they're at 8th and 9th right now with about 11 minutes left in this final practice session before we go racing tomorrow. It's going to be a long weekend for Honda, but again, it'll be a whole different ball game tomorrow, and this will be about the 3/4 of the way mark tomorrow as far as time-wise goes, and the temperature looks to be about the same as what we'll see today. Not counting them out yet, but it's certainly going to be a rough day for Honda.
You get to know these drivers a bit. You can tell just by their verbiage and their voice tone, their inflections, when they feel pretty good about their opportunities. Certainly 2 guys, I think, fall into that category. Tony Kanaan, who's currently P1, and Helio Castroneves. I think both of those guys very, very happy with their race cars, like their chances on race day.
Yeah, and Helio is always good here, as well as Tony Kanaan, a former winner here. And TK's probably hasn't touched the car at all. They might have made a slight change, but to be that confident in a setup in a morning practice session and then come back 4 hours later with the exact same setup, go a couple of miles an hour slower, but still had a good qualification session. A 184 wasn't bad at all when you take into the fact that the first couple of cars went out really struggled, and I think the track kind of caught a lot of the teams off, and that was, I think, very beneficial for Simon Pagenaud, because you had all of the Penske's go back to back to back. It was Montoya, then it was Power, then it was Castroneves. By the time they got to Pagenaud, I think they had a good idea what the track had done, and they were able to quickly make some changes to the car. But Helio Castroneves, good. TK, good. I was surprised at Scott Dixon as well. Scott,
he's 16th quick now.
Yeah, but he was smiling, said he felt the car was okay.
Yeah.
So obviously he's not showing the speed here in this final practice session, but usually when Scott's not happy with the car, you can tell he's not happy with the car, but didn't seem that disappointed in that qualification run. And obviously they haven't found anything yet, but still about 10 minutes left in this final practice session.
Jake Elio Castro Neves is set on pole here a couple of times, most recently a year ago. A qualifying lap record holder at 186.809, but he's yet to get to victory lane here in Iowa.
I'll tell you what, you guys are as good as Kreskin in terms of deciphering this session for Elio Castro Neves. Can't speak for Tony Kanaan because I haven't checked in down on that pit area. I've been watching this 3 team, and Michael, you are correct. I think they're really happy with the setup of that Hitachi machine. Castro Neves, last time that he came in, they handed him the iPad. He looked over telemetry. They made no changes at all. Looked over those Firestone Firehawks, sent that number 3 machine back out onto the course here in Iowa. Then they called him back in. There was a sudden buzz of life here within the team, only to realize as I was watching, they're simply doing simulated pit stops. Brought him in, dropped the stick down, had him bring that 3 machine in. They simulated a tire change, sent him right back out in 4.5 seconds. They've done that now twice, and I would hazard a guess, guys, that when you start getting to the point where you're working on your pit stops, that means your car's in pretty good shape or you like the setup you have. In addition to that, you never know when it's going to come down to a pit stop in terms of winning or losing a race. And oftentimes we see with this Roger Penske team, whether it be Pagenaud, whether it be Castro Neves, Montoya, Will Power, oftentimes that is where they excel. And that's why, because right now they have that luxury and that comfort and security in one another to be able to work those here in this practice session.
Tony Kanaan and Scott Dixon a couple of laps ago showing a leap of faith, running side by side through 3 and 4. A couple of others running in tandem right now. Simon Pagenaud and one of those Ed Carpenter racing machines. I believe that's the 21 of Joseph Newgarden. 8 minutes remaining in this final warm-up session as we get set to go racing tomorrow night here at the Iowa Corn 300.
Hi, I'm Mario Andretti. I was born a race car driver, and as it turns out, so was my grandson Marco. It's been a while since I won the Indy 500. But when I see Marco race, it makes me happy to know that he's on the same tires that helped me win, Firestone. Why? Because you may be born a racer, but Firestone can help make you a champion.
Whatever you drive a Firestone. From the Firestone broadcast booth at the Iowa Speedway, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series.
A driver that we haven't talked much about, maybe because he's 12th in points, but a good qualifying run. Ran 5th at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the 500. Had a top 5 at Road America. A good qualifying run today, Michael Young, for Charlie Kimball in that 83 car. He'll roll off on the inside of row number 3.
Charlie doing, well, we talked about it during the month of May. One of the guys that I thought would have been a little bit better than what he has been. And Charlie's really, since the month of May, has really racked it up a couple more notches, and it's been one of those Charlie Kimball type of seasons. You know, we'll get to Mid-Ohio, he'll be good there. Toronto, he'll be good there as well. And he's been kind of up and down here at Iowa, but one of those quiet little marches for Charlie Kimball as he makes his way through this 2016 campaign. Times we thought maybe he'd finish a little bit better than he did. Sometimes it was of his own doing, and sometimes he just was caught off. But as he's started to make his way through, once we got through the GP, I mean, top 5 and 8, 16th at race number 2 in Belle Isle, but Road America nearly a top 5, a 6th place finish for him there. So Charlie not doing a bad job at all, currently running on the timing and scoring chart 9th quick in our final practice session. But all in all, this has been a great season for Charlie Kimball.
6 top 10 finishes. Michael, his worst finish, other than that 16th place finish at Belle Isle that you mentioned, was a 12th place finish in Phoenix. He finished 11th at Long Beach, 10th at St. Pete, and then was inside the top 10 for the race at Barber Motorsports Park, the GP of Indy, and the 500, back-to-back 5th place finishes, 8th at Belle Isle 1, and then we erroneously said finished 5th at Road America. Actually finished 6th, but I think given the high profile of his teammates and Scott Dixon and Tony Kanaan, the greats of all time, I think he's turned into a solid contributor for Chip Ganassi's racing operation.
Oh, by far. He's come into that, and when he came into the team, it was one of the situations where coming out of the Indy Lights, landed with Ganassi, had that money with Novo Nordisk coming in there, but has proven himself to be a great talent and an asset, I think, to the team. And I think he's learned a lot, in his time spent there with Dario Franchitti, with Scott Dixon. It really has been a great learning experience for him, and I think Charlie has come of age and has come into his own in this 2016 season. And what I think has been great, when he hasn't qualified as well, he'll finish well. We talked about that 16th place starting position, was able to pull off a top 5. So a couple of great moments for Charlie when he's not starting up front to be able to still make a top 5, 6th place finish. That's good news for him. And how about these Hondas? James Hinchcliffe and Michaela Lotion, they were 8th and 9th. Now 3rd and 4th, we've got 2 Hondas in the top 5.
Yep, they're running laps in the 178-mile-an-hour range. Earlier today, Michael, we often talk about date equity and how important it is. Well, you can pencil this race in for 2 more seasons. Now, that's a great announcement.
It certainly is. And one of the situations where when you hear fans, we need more ovals, we need to constantly be adding ovals if we can, and the fans are big fans of these ovals, and this is one of the greats. If you've never been to the Iowa Speedway, 7/8 of a mile, amazing to see these cars turning laps at 17 seconds, 186 miles an hour. If you're an oval fan, have never been to the Iowa Speedway, certainly a destination that you have to make in one of the upcoming seasons for the Verizon IndyCar Series, and great news to have the Iowa Speedway back, and a big-time supporter of the Verizon IndyCar Series, and always look forward to coming here.
3.5 minutes remaining in this session. Activity on pit road has picked up a little bit. The 14 of Sato, the 41 of Hawksworth. Both of the Fuzzies cars are on pit road as we speak. Sebastian Bourdais, I don't know if I can't really tell because of the shadows, but it looks like he's actually out of that race car, and maybe has decided that enough is enough with just a couple of minutes remaining in this session. Now we see Sato headed back out. There goes the 20 of Ed Carpenter. So your top 10, Tony Ganon, Joseph Newgarden, James Hinchcliffe, Michaela Lotion. So Honda flexing a bit of muscle now. Elio is P5, then Bourdais, Will Power, Simon Pagenaud, Graham Rahal, Charlie Kimball. Whatever the checklist is for this final 30-minute warm-up session, Michael, obviously key. Let's not get yourself in any trouble. Let's not make a long night for the crew. Let's take care of the race car and let them push it back to the hauler and the paddock in one piece.
And for teams like Andretti Autosport, just to find some speed, and I think for Marco Andretti, they were chasing that car the first 3/4 of this final practice session, finally able to find some speed. Marco making it up to P11 now, 176.367 with just 2 minutes remaining in this practice session. Certainly not the best news in the world for Marco, but if he can get a car that he feels comfortable with, always a threat here at the Iowa Speedway. And actually watching a couple of the last laps that he's turned, looks a little more comfortable. He just looked extremely uncomfortable the first 15-20 minutes of that lap. And Montoya, boy, having an issue down there in turn number 4. Just came off of turn number 4, almost at a dead stop. Now found the throttle again. Not sure if there was an issue with that car, but he was almost at a stop there at the exit of turn 4.
Dale Harrigal and the folks from Firestone, of course, tire degradation figures probably into the tread wear in design. And what do you think, Michael? 15 to 20 laps or so, you might start seeing some of the grip go away on those Firestone Firehawks?
I would say right around there. And as the run goes, it'll be the guys that are really managing their tires as they make their way around here and they get through a full stint. I think obviously these tires have been designed to become less grippy as the run goes through. It allowed the various drivers to save them. So basically you see who really can manage their tires the best, and you really see that time and time again. And as we had seen a couple of years ago with Ryan Hunter-Ray, who decided to come in and get new tires while others stayed out on that old rubber. It really is tire management, and Firestone does a great job at Iowa Speedway, everywhere we go, but here at Iowa Speedway as well. So 15 and 20, I think, good, and then they'll start to fall off. But by the end of the run, they're going to be hanging on and begging to come in.
Less than a minute to go. To give you an idea of what our schedule is like tomorrow, join us noon Central, 1 o'clock Eastern, as we go Indy Lights qualifying. Nick Yeoman, Davey Hamilton, Michael Young, Rob Howden will have all of the action for you. And then at 2:15 Central Time, 3:15 Eastern, Indy Lights race. Looking forward to that. Nick Yeoman, Davey Hamilton to the boot. Jake Query will call the action from the top of the Master Control Tower here. And then Rob Howden, yours truly, be working pit road for the Indy Lights race tomorrow. And then, of course, flag-to-flag coverage of the Iowa Corn 300. We'll take the air with the pre-race festivities at 4 p.m. Central, 5 o'clock Eastern time. It's yours truly, Davey Hamilton, Jake Query calling the action up top. Nick Yeoman, Michael Young, and Rob Howden. Michael, based upon what we've seen in this warm-up session, could be a typical wild night of racing here at Iowa Speedway.
What I've found interesting, especially out in turns 1 and 2, I've seen drivers pass on the outside. I've seen drivers pass on the inside. If you keep a driver pinched down and they're having any kind of ill handling on the car, they'll tend to want to wash up, so the outside advantageous. As we saw Joseph Newgarden try to make a few passes. Ed Carpenter had a little problem when he was down low. So able to hang it around to the outside, but boy, saw a lot of great passes on the inside as well. So a couple of lines going through this course, which we normally don't see. Turns 1, normally a one-line, one-groove racetrack. We might see 1 or 2 lines and actually see some really good racing tomorrow afternoon. Looking forward to this one.
Checkered flag is out. Tony Gaudon, Joseph Newgarden, Simon Pagenaud, Castro Neves, Hitch, Aloshin, Bourdais, Power, Rahal, and Kimball, your top 10. Before we go, Michael Young caught up with your pole sitter Simon Pagenaud after qualifying today.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the 500th pole for Penske Racing, is that true?
That is pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, it is true. 500, how incredible it is.
And Simon Pagenaud's name will adorn that forever. Congratulations, and another great run for you, 5th pole of the year. But obviously the big prize is getting the championship, but this season up to this point, describe it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just qualifying. You know, there's still a lot of work to do this weekend, but it's certainly a great stamp on the work that the 22 team has been doing, but the whole Penske organization. You know, we work so well, all 4 of us together with Elio, Juan, and Will, that things are really nice to go to work every morning. We managed to make the car better together, and then it's gloves on the racetrack. So you know, super proud of everybody with the Menards car back here in Iowa. It's fantastic to accomplish success like we have this year. But again, big days tomorrow. That's when the points come. So we'll see tomorrow.
Flag-to-flag coverage of the Iowa Corn 300 tomorrow, again at 4 p.m. Central Time. That's 5 p.m. Eastern. We hope you will join us. Our thanks to our on-site engineer and producer, Rick Evans. The director of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network is Wally Levitt. Thanks to Jake Query for a great job on pit road, as always. For Michael Young, I'm Mark Jane. So long for now from Iowa Speedway.
This is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has won his 4th 500-mile race. A.J. Foyt, our winner. The flag will fly now for Tom Sneva and then for Al Unser. We will be talking with all of these drivers in just a moment. Lou Palmer is in victory lane as A.J. Foyt takes now his victory lap around the 2.5 miles of Indianapolis. A record-breaking end to a record-breaking month. A.J. Foyt, the 4th win at Indianapolis. A month that saw the 200-mile-an-hour barrier broken, not just in the practice where it is unofficial, but in the qualifying by Tom Sneva, our second-place car at the moment. And then, too, the first woman to enter, to qualify, and to compete in a 500-mile race, Janet Guthrie of New York City. But for the moment, the name is A.J. Foyt of Houston, Texas. The car is his, a Coyote. The engine is his, a Foyt V8.